2NURFM.com, a broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.
Professor John Fischetti from the University of Newcastle for Education Matters. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Meryl.
It's that time of the year. The kids have been back at school a couple of weeks now, and generally the little crinkles, perhaps the issues are starting to surface, aren't they?
Yeah, it's the time of the year where we think summer holidays was a long time ago, but 3 or 4 weeks in, it may be the time to take charge of this year before it gets away from us.
Sure. Now, one of the ideas that we've had is that we want to talk to people about the questions that principals wish they were asked. And you've actually done a survey on this.
Yeah, my colleague Scott Immig and I from the School of Education have asked principals around the Hunter, what do you wish parents would ask you? And we got their survey results, and they're in some different categories than maybe back in the day when I was in school, and then another generation later when you were in school.
So what are the categories, firstly?
One is around the parents' roles themselves, that parents have a new role and responsibility for connecting with the school than maybe was back in our day. And that's the first area, is what are those responsibilities? We'll get to an example of those in a second. How can children be supported at home to accomplish the school's agenda? The school's philosophy. They wish they were asked more about what is their intent, because each school has a slightly different vision. The communication between home and family, they wish parents asked what they could do more. And then the typical ones you might say is the structures of the school day, or the rules, or the marking system, or any of those policies, which is actually last on the principal's list. They think those are fairly obvious, much more than maybe parents do. But I think it's very interesting that those things, which typically are the reasons parents talk to principals, are the last thing really the principals are interested in being asked.
But it is interesting, and maybe there's follow-up research there for you in talking to parents about the questions that they want to ask as well. Because just as that example there, the actual structure of the day, numerous occasions I've thought, I wonder when recess is, or I wonder when lunch is. You know, if you do have to pull your child out to go to an appointment, you want to make it, you know, at the least impactful time. So you think, well, maybe if we do it after lunch, I wonder what time lunch starts and finishes. Those little things are actually incredibly important to busy parents, grandparents, carers, you know, people who are responsible for children.
That's true, but maybe that indicates those should be obvious and sent out by the teacher, and the principal's time should be left for sort of this notion of what are the top 5 things we can do as a family to enhance our school community and family relationship. So would parents spend the time talking to the principal about what families can do to support the school and the community? Typically, the conversation with the principal is, what is the principal or the school going to do? The principals would like families to take ownership of what they can do, since schools have inherited so much of the responsibility. A little bit of a different twist. What leadership opportunities are there for my child in this school?
Oh, that's a good one.
They would like parents to ask about what their child can do to get involved. Typically, when they're meeting, of course, it's about things the child may not have done as well. So that may not be for the first meeting you have with your principal. What kind of student are you hoping to produce by the time they leave year 12? What's that philosophical approach of the school to generate a great thinker, a great leader, a great citizen for the future? So get inside the philosophy of the school.
To transpose that, you know, how is my child going to turn out at the end of this educational experience with you, with this school? You know, what are you going to produce from my child, I suppose, is a more layperson's term to ask. And principals are okay with that. That's pretty confronting. You know, what are you going to do for my child?
Yep. And in another way, what kind of citizen is this school going to produce?
Of course.
I think quite often we think that it's obvious they're going to produce people who are literate, or who vote, or who know how to say please and thank you, or know how to read and write. But all of those are really results of school. The purpose of schooling really is around preparing people to be amazing and to develop their potential and go for it. And then along the way, they should read and write and do those. So if you think of it, we've often gotten schools backwards. The things we do in school should prepare them to do the other things, not vice versa. And I think that's what principals are looking for. They're looking for answers about some of the things that really engage this child. Tell us what we need to know about what gets your child actively involved that we might be missing.
Ooh,
so if you think your child says, oh, that's boring, well, it may be, but it also could be the teacher needs to know, or the school needs to know, what could the school do to get your child even more active in school, rather than respond the other way around on what might take place. So I think that's a key one.
They want to know what your child's into.
Exactly.
Okay.
What do we do to cope with dilemmas and issues around playground, around things, becomes the last interest of principals, because they assume that parents actually know that stuff. So they're less interested in dealing with the mechanics. They're much more interested in what kind of career and professional coordinates and guidance we offered in my senior year. So that they can be targeting their child to say, we're moving this in a projection forward, not just ticking boxes and getting to year 12. We're on a pathway to career or university that follows.
It seems to me like there could be a mismatch here between principals' expectations and parents' expectations, because I know as a parent, the first thing when my child comes home, I say, how was your day? And I want to hear it was great or this happened. And normally the first thing that my child talks about is those inter-playground relationships. So that is heightened in my priority. But obviously the principal's priority, whilst they care about that, they're more interested in the bigger kind of questions rather than the day-to-day relationships of the children. I see that as something that really needs to be looked at.
Absolutely. I think philosophically, principals are hoping the school's a great place to learn, that parents are feeling engaged enough fits the philosophy of those parents at home. I think that's where busy families running around all the time may not be taking the time to make sure it's a good fit. I think ultimately the message is that parents take the time to set a special occasion with a principal to say, can we just talk about my child, their progress, your school, and the vision, and where those are connecting? Not waiting for the family night or the teacher visit night or any of those things. Set a deliberate time and really get actively involved. And I think in those philosophical connections, make sure the school's direction is where you feel comfortable, because I think ultimately everybody wants is what's best for their children. I will say we have probably in the Hunter the finest group of principals in the state of New South Wales and around the country. Lots of them are new, exciting. They're working parents themselves. They want what's right for their children, and they're open and willing to engage with parents in wonderful conversations about what's right for their child.
So be proactive, put aside time for a principal today. Make that phone call to the school.
Don't wait till your child is miserable to have that conversation. Do it right away, and also let the child know when you're doing that they haven't done anything wrong, because the notion of visiting the principal for a younger child could be that they've done something. No, you're just getting involved because you want what's right for them, and turn it into a really positive occurrence. Otherwise, that whole day they may be fretting that there's some secret message in your visit to school.
Oh, don't worry, it's given me the heebies already. I've got to go and see the principal. I'm feeling very nervous. That's
Principals are people too.
Harking back to days of old. John Fischetti, thank you so much. Education Matters. We do it every other Wednesday. Don't miss it. We'll catch you in a fortnight, and thanks for your time, John. Yeah, make an appointment to see that principal. Such great advice. 2NURFM.